What would you do if the man everyone called useless was the only one who knew how to survive a dying world? Chu Fom had already been killed by a wild boar once, yet his second life began with another boar standing between his daughter and starvation. By the end of this winter, the worthless son his family discarded would become the shield an entire village refused to abandon. Chu Fom opened his eyes in a place called the Great Qin Dynasty. The name meant nothing to him because no history book from his old world had ever mentioned it. Before waking there, Chu Fom had been an outdoor survival streamer. He crossed wilderness, built shelters, tracked animals, and broadcast his adventures to people watching safely from home. He had also served in the military and learned archery, climbing, riding, tracking, and practical combat. None of those skills had saved him when a wild boar knocked him from a mountain. One fall ended his first life. When consciousness returned, he found himself inside the body of another man who shared his name. That man was also called Chu Fom. Unfortunately, the original Chu Fom had lived a life far worse than the wilderness. He had a young wife named Zhao Sha Sha. He also had a 5-year-old daughter named Meow Meow. Both were thin enough to make Chu Fom's stomach tighten the moment he saw them. His new family had not eaten for 2 days. Sha Sha's cheekbones stood sharply beneath her skin. Meow Meow cried because hunger had become stronger than her ability to endure quietly. The original Chu Fom had died after cold and starvation weakened his body beyond recovery. His parents could have helped him. They simply chose not to. The Chu family favored his older brother Chu Long. Chu Long had produced a son. Chu Fom had only produced a daughter. In his parents' eyes, that made one brother valuable and the other disposable. They gave Chu Long food, grain, and the better house. Chu Fom received the smallest ruin at the edge of Yulong village. Its walls were cracked. Cold wind slipped through holes stuffed with old straw. The fence barely stood. There were no proper windows. Even the heated bed could not hold warmth because the entire room leaked freezing air. Worse, the grain Chu Fom had grown on his own land had been taken by his parents. Most of it went to Chu Long's household. His wife and daughter were left to starve. The original man endured all of it without fighting back. The new Chu Fom was not that man. He had survived forests, mountains, dangerous animals, and military training. He refused to wake in another world only to watch a child die from hunger beside him. With no money and almost no food, he grabbed a bamboo basket and a small hoe. Then he headed toward Yulong Mountain. Every villager knew the stories about that place. They called the mountain cursed. Years earlier, an old hunter had climbed it and never returned alive. His body was eventually discovered with its organs missing. No villager wanted to know what had done that. Even during famine, people avoided the mountain. Chu Fom understood their fear. He simply feared his daughter's empty stomach more. He had not walked far when he realized Meow Meow had secretly followed him. Their little white puppy Ben followed her too. Meow Meow was painfully weak. In this era, a simple cold could kill a child. Chu Fom wanted to send her home. The stubborn girl clung to him and refused. In the end, he kept her close and continued searching. His old survival knowledge immediately became his greatest advantage. Plants that looked like useless weeds to villagers were food to him. He recognized shepherd's purse and black nightshade. Yet winter was approaching fast. The mountain offered little. War had already pushed food prices through the roof. Refugees wandered outside nearby towns. Enemy forces threatened the border. Meat had become a luxury for the wealthy. Meow. Meow wrapped both arms around Chu Fom's leg and admitted she wanted meat. He promised he would get her some. At that moment, he had no idea how to keep the promise. Then Ben barked sharply. Meow Meow screamed. Chu Fom grabbed his hoe and ran. A black wild boar stood near his daughter. It was not fully grown, but its tusks were real and its eyes burned with fear. Ben was terrified. His tail had disappeared between his legs. Still, the little dog planted himself in front of Meow Meow and barked. Chu Fom instantly understood why the starving family had never eaten Ben. The dog was not livestock. He was family. Chu Fom pulled Meow Meow behind him. The sight of the boar dragged his mind straight back to his first death. For a moment, his heartbeat became painfully loud. Then experience defeated fear. He noticed the boar's rear leg. A metal trap held it tightly. Dried blood surrounded the wound. The animal had been trapped for a long time. Chu Fom checked the surrounding snow and trees. Wild boars usually moved in groups. This one was alone. Its herd had probably abandoned the injured animal. That changed everything. A healthy boar would have sent Chu Fom running with his daughter. An injured and exhausted boar looked different to a starving hunter. Its meat could feed his family. Its organs were edible. Its fat could become precious cooking oil. For the first time since waking in the Great Qin Dynasty, Chu Fom saw a real opportunity. All he possessed was a basket, a hoe, and some rope. Fortunately, his old life had taught him what knowledge could do with simple tools. He tied the rope into a lasso. Meow Meow received strict instructions to hide with Benbin behind a tree. If the boar charged, she had to keep the trunk between herself and the animal. Then Chew Foam approached. He moved slowly. The boar stamped its hooves. Chew Foam stopped. The animal calmed. He advanced again. Patience was more important than strength. When the pressure finally became unbearable, the boar bolted despite its injured leg. Chew Foam had been waiting for exactly that reaction. The lasso flew. The rope closed around the animal. Chew Foam sprinted toward a thick tree and wrapped the rope around its trunk. He could never overpower a charging boar with his arms. The tree did not need arms. The animal thrashed violently. Rope burned against bark. Chew Foam stayed behind the trunk and tightened the restraint. Sweat covered his forehead despite the winter cold. Then he remembered Sha Sha's hollow cheeks. He remembered Meow Meow asking for meat. He remembered the promise he had made without knowing how to fulfill it. Chew Foam lifted his hoe. The boar showed its tusks. He raised the bamboo basket. Snow began falling. Chew Foam charged. The struggle was uglier than any heroic hunting story. The injured boar fought desperately. It struck him. It almost bit him. His basket shattered. Vegetables scattered across the blood-stained snow. But the sharp hoe kept falling. At last, the boar stopped moving. Chew Foam stood above it, breathing hard. Meow Meow stared at the carcass. Then the starving girl began jumping in the snow. They had meat. For her, those 3 words meant more than treasure. Chew Foam knew the victory could become a death sentence if he stayed too long. Blood would attract wolves, leopards, or bears. He tied the carcass and began dragging it downhill. Meow Meow grabbed the rope with her tiny hands. Benbin bit the boar's ear and pulled as though his life depended on it. The sight almost made Chew Foam laugh. It took them 2 exhausting hours to reach home. Their miserable house stood closest to the mountain. For once, its isolation became useful. Nobody saw Chew Foam drag an entire boar through Yulong village. Zhao Shasha had been waiting anxiously at the door. The moment she saw the carcass, she froze. Chew Foam told her to stop staring and help. She immediately grabbed the rope. Only then did he realize how naturally strong his painfully thin wife seemed. Shasha was young, barely 21, and hardship had almost erased her beauty. Yet her eyes remained bright. Chew Foam looked from her to their daughter. He had been dropped into a dynasty he did not understand. A war was closing and his own family despised him, and a supposedly cursed mountain watched from behind his house. But that night, for the first time, the smell of meat filled their broken home. Chew Foam did not know it yet, but that single boar had already changed how Yulong village would see him. The family waited for darkness before butchering the animal. Iron tools were tightly controlled because the dynasty feared rebellion during wartime. Even village knives remained under the chief's supervision. Chew Foam borrowed a cleaver by claiming he needed to chop firewood. Then he and Shasha worked through the night. They separated the hooves, legs, hide, head, organs, bones, and meat. Chew Foam paid special attention to the belly fat. Every piece was rendered into lard. The result was more than 10 pounds of precious cooking oil. Meow Meow watched so closely that Chew Foam feared she might start chewing raw pork. He quickly sliced tender meat and stir-fried it with the vegetables from the mountain. The family's first proper meal was almost ready. Then Chew Foam noticed the old metal trap. In this world, even rusty iron had enormous value. He was imagining bows, arrowheads, and other tools when voices came from outside. Chulong had smelled the food. Their mother stood with him. Chew Foam's good mood vanished immediately. The memories belonging to the dead body's former owner told him exactly what these people were like. They had ignored his suffering. They had taken his grain. They had favored Chulong at every opportunity. Now the smell of pork had finally brought them running. For one dark second, Chew Foam looked at the cleaver. A famine could turn knowledge of stored meat into a dangerous secret? Shasha quietly placed a hand on his shoulder. Chew Foam calmed himself and opened the door. Chulong sniffed the air shamelessly. Their mother did not bother pretending to care about Chew Foam's health. Chulong's wife had recently given birth to a son. The old woman demanded half of Chew Foam's meat for that household. Chew Foam laughed. Then he asked where his own grain had gone. He had land. He had grown crops. Even after taxes, 3 people should have received enough to survive. His mother had taken almost everything. She claimed Chulong's household needed more because a boy had been born. According to her, Chew Foam should still have had old grain. Chew Foam pointed at Sha Sha. He pointed at Meow Meow. Both looked like walking skeletons. There was no hidden grain. There had only been hunger. Chew Foam stepped forward with the cleaver in his hand. The old Chew Foam had never spoken back. His mother finally noticed that something had changed. He pointed toward his miserable house. No windows. Broken walls. A collapsing fence? The worst home in the village. He reminded her how she had given bread to Chu Long's child while offering Meow Meow only water. Chu Feng could endure insult. He could endure poverty. He would not accept cruelty toward his daughter. His mother's answer was colder than the winter outside. Meow Meow was only a girl. In her eyes, a daughter was a losing investment. Chu Long's sons carried the family name, therefore they mattered more. She ordered Chu Feng to surrender the meat and work Chu Long's fields the next morning. Chu Feng became quiet. He finally understood that reasoning was useless. When his mother tried to enter the house herself, the cleaver slammed into the ground before her feet. Her face lost its color. Chu Long screamed that Chu Feng wanted to kill his own family. Their mother immediately slapped Chu Long. The unexpected strike confused everyone. Then she hissed that his shouting might tell the entire village about the meat. Chu Feng almost admired the shameless logic. She already considered everything in his house her property. Chu Feng refused again. His mother repeated that the Chu family would feed him, but had no responsibility toward a worthless granddaughter. Chu Feng's grip tightened around the cleaver. Then Chu Long noticed the iron trap. A small pig trotter remained caught inside it. Greed instantly replaced fear. Chu Feng claimed the trap had only caught one leg. He said the family had already eaten most of it. Chu Long did not believe him. He tried pushing past Chu Feng. The cleaver rose. Ben Bin bared his tiny teeth beside his master. Chu Long stopped. Cold sweat appeared on his forehead. The brother he remembered had never looked at him this way. Chu Feng offered a trade. Chu Long could have the pig trotter. In return, Chu Feng wanted his cotton jacket. Chu Long stared at him in disbelief. Cotton was a luxury during winter. His mother considered the matter for only a moment. Pig trotter soup might help Chu Long's wife produce milk. She personally pulled the jacket from her favorite son's body. Chu Feng received the jacket. Chu Long received one trotter. The two visitors finally left. Sha remained worried. Disobeying parents carried serious consequences in this era. Chu Feng understood. He also knew he would make the same choice again. What belonged to his wife and daughter would be protected. Sha cleaned the cotton jacket. Then she began smoking pork above the chimney to preserve it. Chu Feng preferred fresh meat. Sha thought months ahead. Her caution reminded him how difficult the coming winter would be. The house still needed repairs. The family needed grain. They needed money. Most importantly, they needed a reliable way to survive. Chu Feng looked toward Yulong Mountain. An idea formed. Hunting was dangerous for everyone else. For a trained survival expert, it was an advantage. He could feed his family with meat. Extra hides and meat could be traded for grain. If the war stayed away long enough, he might build a real life here. The next morning, heavy snow covered Yulong village. Chu Feng first returned the borrowed cleaver to village chief Duty Hai. Chu Long had already filled the meeting room with complaints. He told everyone Chu Feng had found meat and insulted his mother. Wang Wei, a village troublemaker, even boasted that he would force Chu Feng to kneel. Then Chu Feng entered carrying the blood-stained cleaver. The entire room became silent. No one challenged him. Duty Hai later admitted that Chu Feng's eyes reminded him of bandits who had once attacked the village. Chu Feng returned the weapon and left. Behind him, Chu Long and Wang Wei eventually found their courage again. Their courage lasted only because Chu Feng was already gone. Chu Feng headed straight for Yulong Mountain. This time he wore the cotton jacket covered with animal skin. He carried his hoe and the old iron trap. The trap's internal spring used deer tendon. It was nearly worn out. Chu Feng estimated that it might survive 2 more uses. The tendon itself gave him another idea. With suitable wood, he could make a bow. Fresh tracks soon appeared in the snow. 2-pronged hoof prints suggested deer. Chu Feng followed them carefully. He also searched for vegetables along the way. The snowy mountain was dangerously quiet. Deep snow hid holes in unstable ground. One broken leg could become a death sentence. Then Chu Feng sensed something. Someone was following him. He suspected Chu Long had spread news about the meat. Perhaps a villager wanted to steal his hunting ground. Chu Feng climbed an enormous pine tree. He waited on a low branch. Soon a man hurried beneath him and looked around anxiously. Chu Feng tightened his grip on the hoe. Then he dropped. His body slammed the follower into the snow. The hoe stopped a finger's width from the man's neck. The terrified follower was village chief Duty Hai. Chu Feng pretended to be surprised. Duty Hai claimed he only wanted to hunt with him. Chu Feng watched the chief carefully. The man was respected in Yulong village. Respect did not fill his family's stomach. Duty Hai was as poor as everyone else. After seeing Chu Feng return with meat, the chief had finally overcome his fear of Yulong Mountain. Then Duty Hai opened his bag. He produced an axe. Possessing such a weapon could bring execution to an entire commoner's family. The chief offered it to Chu Feng. Another forbidden item followed. An old bow without a string. By revealing the weapons, Du Dehai placed his life in Chu Feng's hands. Chu Feng finally believed he meant no harm. Suddenly, rustling came from the forest. Both men climbed a tree. A herd of rock sheep raced beneath them. Chu Feng was surprised to see high-altitude animals so low on the mountain. Du Dehai wanted him to attack immediately. Chu Feng refused. The sheep were running from something. Moments later, a white snow leopard covered in black spots appeared. It stopped below their tree. Cold eyes looked upward. Du Dehai nearly fell from the branch. Chu Feng remained calm. The predator was dangerous, but its size limited the prey it could kill. Even the leopard had avoided the adult rock sheep. While they waited, Chu Feng used the axe to cut suitable branches. He carved rough wooden arrows. Then he removed the deer tendon from the trap. The old bow finally received a string. Chu Feng now had a working ranged weapon. His military archery training suddenly became priceless. When the leopard disappeared, the rock sheep circled back uphill. Chu Feng studied the herd. The adults were too large. His crude bow had never been tested. Then he spotted a younger sheep. Chu Feng drew the bow. Du Dehai watched in confusion. The wooden arrow flew. It pierced the young sheep's neck. The animal collapsed. The rest of the herd continued running. Du Dehai climbed down and stared at Chu Feng as though seeing a stranger. The supposedly useless villager knew how to shoot. Chu Feng merely smiled and claimed he had learned a little. The two men carried their kill downhill. On the way, Du Dehai gave Chu Feng both the bow and the axe. Then the chief finally explained the truth about Yulong Mountain. The danger was never a curse. The enemy nation of Da lay beyond the mountain. Spies crossed the wilderness. Criminals from both countries hid there. Dangerous mountain people also lived beyond the familiar trails. Wild animals were only one threat. Human beings were worse. The old hunter whose organs disappeared had probably been murdered. No normal animal removed organs while leaving the rest of a corpse intact. Chu Feng immediately understood why Du Dehai had frightened villagers away from the mountain. The chief had been protecting them. When they returned, Shasha's smile stiffened at the sight of Du Dehai. The chief immediately praised her husband. Chu Feng shared the lamb's brain hooves and organs with him. Only then did Chu Feng learn why Du Dehai had risked the mountain. The chief's son Du Chong was dangerously ill. The same kind of weakness had killed the original Chu Feng. A town doctor believed meat and better food might save the young man. A desperate father had brought illegal weapons into a cursed mountain for his son. Chu Feng respected that. He carefully skinned the lamb and butchered the meat. Shasha prepared a fire. That evening, thick lamb organ soup filled their bowls. Chu Feng no longer bothered hiding ordinary meat. If he continued hunting, the village would discover his new ability sooner or later. The bow and axe remained hidden under the bed. Those could bring government punishment. Chulong soon appeared again. This time he carried a steaming rough flour bun. He waved it around like a priceless treasure. Chulong proudly explained that their mother had taken even more of Chu Feng's future grain share. She traded it for flour and salt. Then she made buns for her favorite son. Chulong ate in front of Chu Feng and mocked him. Chu Feng barely cared. The dark flour looked rough enough to scratch a throat. Then Chulong tried tormenting Meow Meow. The little girl looked straight at her uncle. She declared that his stinking bun smelled worse than Ben. Her daddy brought home meat. She had no reason to envy a stupid bun. Chu Feng burst out laughing. The moment Chulong insulted his daughter, however, Chu Feng reached for the cleaver. Chulong immediately changed the subject. Then the smell of lamb soup floated from the kitchen. Shasha carried out 3 bowls of milky white broth. Meat and organs filled every bowl. Wild onions rested on top. Meow Meow ate happily. Chulong's mouth almost fell open. He desperately claimed that soup without bread was pitiful. At that exact moment, Du Dehai arrived. The chief carried 2 pounds of the finest flour in Yulong village. He gave it to Chu Feng. Chulong could not understand. Why would the village chief reward a useless man? Du Dehai repeated one word. Useless? Then the chief laughed coldly and walked past him. Chulong stood outside while Du Dehai received a bowl of rich lamb soup. Envy turned his face almost green. The chief understood something important during that meal. Yulong village was starving. Harvests were shrinking. Taxes kept rising. Most households survived on old grain. Now the village suddenly had a skilled hunter. Chu Feng could become more than one family's hope. He could become a resource for everyone. Chu Feng also realized isolation would eventually become dangerous. He needed his broken house repaired. Meow Meow needed other children. Shasha needed neighbors. And Chu Feng needed people willing to stand beside his family. He asked Du Dehai for help. The chief gathered the villagers. Chu Feng offered meat to anyone willing to repair his house. Starving men almost stampeded toward his yard. Even Wang Wei came. The man who had recently threatened to beat Chu Feng worked harder than anyone. Chew Foam displayed only part of his stored meat. In a famine showing too much wealth could create enemies. Men mixed mud and repaired the foundation. Others sealed the walls. Trees were cut for a woodshed. The fence was rebuilt. Village women helped Shasha cook. Some brought vegetables. Duty High's fine flour became flatbread so everyone could share. In only 4 hours, months of work disappeared. Chew Foam's home finally had solid walls. The fence stood tall. A proper woodshed protected their supplies. Wang Wei looked increasingly embarrassed. Chulong had described his younger brother as a selfish monster. Yet the man before Wang Wei risked his life on Yulong Mountain and shared meat with starving neighbors. The lie had become obvious. Then Chew Foam's mother arrived. Her eyes landed on the meat. Rage twisted her face. Chew Foam had refused his own family. Now he was feeding outsiders. She screamed that everything belonging to a Chew belonged to the Chew family. Chew Foam calmly answered that the meat was his. He would give it to anyone he chose. Duty High stepped between them. The village chief mocked the old woman's obsession with family status. The Chew family was not a noble clan. They were poor villagers like everyone else. The other villagers finally began speaking too. Wang Wei delivered the cruelest truth. Respecting a mother was one thing. Feeding a grown brother who hid behind her skirt was another. Chulong's own former friend rolled up his sleeves. Chulong immediately hid behind his mother. Laughter erupted. One brother entered a supposedly cursed mountain to feed his wife and child. The other still needed his mother to protect him. Chew Foam barely needed to defend himself anymore. The village could finally see both brothers clearly. Lunch was served. Hot meat soup and flatbread passed from hand to hand. Some villagers ate slowly with tears in their eyes. Others swallowed their food in moments. Several secretly saved half for family members waiting at home. Meow Meow spat out a bone. Ben Bin proudly stole it and marched toward his bed. Chew Foam's mother and Chew Long remained in the yard. Their stomachs growled loudly. Chew Long tugged his mother's sleeve and complained that he wanted soup. The old woman finally lost control. She tried grabbing bowls from starving villagers. Nobody surrendered food. They only avoided striking her because she was Chew Foam's mother. Chew Foam gave her a simple choice. Work and eat. 'Cause trouble and leave. His mother screamed about filial duty. Chew Foam finally released years of anger carried by the dead body's memories. She had taken his grain. She had allowed Meow Meow to starve. She had left his family freezing inside the worst house in Yulong village. She let Chew Long harass them whenever he wanted. Chew Foam asked what kind of mother behaved that way. Then he offered to cut ties completely. She could keep his farmland. In exchange, she would never enter his house and demand another thing. The old woman's eyes widened. A few days earlier, she might have accepted instantly. Now she had seen the meat. She had seen Duty High praise Chew Foam. Her useless son suddenly had value. Chulong panicked and tried calming everyone. Chew Foam repeated the choice. Work or leave. Chulong surrendered. He worked for half a bowl of soup and half a piece of bread. His mother refused. She walked away hungry. By evening, the repairs were complete. For the first time, Chew Foam's family slept in a warm room. Meow Meow rolled across the heated bed and laughed. Shasha hugged her husband. She called him amazing. Chew Foam teased her until her face turned red. Their peaceful moment ended when scratching came from outside. Chew Foam moved to the new window. Snow reflected enough light for him to see the yard. White fur crossed the darkness. Black spots moved beneath the snow. The snow leopard from Yulong Mountain had followed him home. Chew Foam's body became tense. He could fight for himself. Shasha and Meow Meow were another matter. The new fence was no obstacle to the cat. It jumped over effortlessly. The repaired walls had probably saved the family's lives. Before the villagers fixed the house, the animal could have entered through the gaps. Chew Foam blamed himself. Days of butchering pork and lamb had filled the area with blood and meat scents. A starving predator had followed those smells downhill. Chew Foam grabbed the hidden axe. Shasha begged him to lock the door and wait. Chew Foam refused. Their winter meat was stored in the woodshed. Its roof was weak. If the leopard returned repeatedly, the danger would only grow. He needed to drive it away. Chew Foam opened the door with a roar. He swung the axe and made himself look aggressive. The startled leopard jumped onto the woodshed roof. It crouched directly above the stored meat. Hunger defeated its fear. Chew Foam changed tactics. He collected hot coals from the stove. Then he lit a torch made with pig fat. The moment flames appeared, panic entered the leopard's eyes. It jumped from the roof. It cleared the fence. Then it vanished toward Yulong Mountain. Shasha ran outside and wrapped both arms around Chew Foam. He comforted her. Inside, however, he knew the problem was larger than one leopard. Heavy snow had buried the highlands. Mountain animals were losing food. Predators were approaching human settlements. Chew Foam checked the woodshed. Smoked pork hanging from the rafters had attracted the cat. Benbin had slept through the entire invasion. Chu Foam scolded the useless guard dog. Benbin woke and happily ran in circles. Chu Foam prepared for the leopard's return. He repaired the old iron trap. Lamb meat became bait. Rope snares surrounded the trap. If the leopard returned, Chu Foam intended to finish the matter. A leopard hide was worth more than pig and sheep hides combined. He finally returned to bed. Before dawn, Dudahai's shouting woke him. Government officers had arrived to collect grain. Chu Foam immediately knew something was wrong. The last collection had happened only half a month earlier. Taxes were supposed to be collected monthly. The war was clearly becoming worse. Chu Foam had no grain ready. Then Dudahai appeared carrying nearly half a sack from his own family's supply. The sacrifice stunned Chu Foam. Every household needed its grain to survive the winter. Dudahai's family had little more than anyone else. The chief explained that Chu Foam's meat had saved his sick son. He considered the grain repayment of a life debt. Chu Foam accepted the help with genuine gratitude. At the village center, armed officers waited beside a cart. Chulong immediately noticed Chu Foam approaching without a sack. Greed and malice lit his eyes. He loudly told the officers that his brother had brought no grain. He demanded Chu Foam's arrest. 2 officers drew their swords. Chu Foam's mother watched without emotion. The villagers reacted differently. They offered to combine their own grain and save Chu Foam. Every voice defending him weakened the anger inside his chest. In only days, strangers had shown him more family loyalty than his blood relatives. His mother finally made an offer. She would pay his grain tax. Chu Foam and Sha Sha only needed to return to the main household. Chu Foam immediately understood her real goal. She wanted his hunting profits. If he became useless again, she would discard him again. Chu Foam asked directly whether she wanted her son or the meat in his yard. The old woman insisted that everything a Chu owned belonged to the family. She ordered him to kneel and apologize. Chu Foam refused. Chulong demanded the officers search his house and arrest him. The villagers stared at the older brother with disgust. Wartime prison could have become a place from which no commoner returned. Chu Foam's mother asked one final time whether he would submit. He answered with one word: number. Chulong excitedly called for the officers. Chu Foam remained calm. Instead, he asked why grain was being collected half a month early. The officers sneered. From that moment onward, tax collection would happen every 2 weeks. No grain meant jail. Despair spread through Yulong village. Winter wheat had not even grown. Children were already hungry. The villagers protested until the officers exposed their swords. Silence returned. Dudahai stepped forward. He paid for both his household and Chu Foam's. The officers accepted the grain and left. Chulong immediately accused Chu Foam of stealing. Dudahai coldly explained that the grain had been his. Chulong shut his mouth. Then the chief addressed Yulong village. Villagers had to protect one another. Reporting neighbors to government officers would not be tolerated again. Chulong and his mother received one warning. Another betrayal would bring expulsion. During wartime, exile was almost a death sentence. The pair retreated. Yet no one celebrated. Grain collection every 2 weeks would eventually empty every home. Wang Wei sat in the snow with his head in his hands. Then he suggested hunting with Chu Foam. Dudahai called the idea dangerous. Wang Wei asked why Chu Foam could enter the mountain while everyone else starved. Other young villagers agreed. Dudahai realized hunger had become stronger than fear. He established 3 rules. Everyone would obey Chu Foam. No one would wander alone. Every kill would be shared. Chu Foam agreed. A few rock sheep could feed the village. Dudahai's weak son, Dachong, stepped forward. Years of malnutrition had destroyed his health. Chu Foam recognized the signs immediately. Proper food and medicine could have helped easily in his old world. Here, survival itself had become miraculous. Duchong begged to join. He would rather risk death than remain a burden to his family. His father reluctantly surrendered. More than 20 villagers prepared for Yulong Mountain. The youngest was only 14. Hidden weapons suddenly appeared from almost every household. Axes, sickles, even an old sword. Chu Foam realized Yulong village had kept many secrets. Dudahai forced everyone to swear silence. Chu Foam carried his bow and axe openly among them. He and the chief led the formation. Wang Wei and Sun Quan guarded the rear. The group searched for the rock sheep herd. At first, excitement made the young men careless. Wang Wei and Sun Quan spotted a rabbit. They decided to catch it secretly and avoid sharing with 20 people. Duchong warned them. They ignored him. The 2 slipped away. Hours passed. The remaining villagers grew exhausted and began complaining. Dudahai finally told them what Chu Foam's previous hunt had required. Chu Foam had walked for hours alone. He had tracked rock sheep through snow. A snow leopard had been nearby. The lamb everyone enjoyed had not fallen from the sky. The villagers looked at Chu Foam differently. Then Du Chong stumbled toward the group in panic. Wang Wei and Sun Quan had not returned. Du Dahai slapped his son for waiting so long to report it. Chu Feng pulled the chief back. Blame would not find missing men. Their footprints were already disappearing beneath fresh snow. Chu Feng refused to divide the entire group. 2 lost people were enough. Splitting up might create 10 more. He ordered Du Chong to guide the exhausted villagers home. Only Chu Feng and Du Dihai remained. They returned to the point where the 2 reckless hunters had disappeared. Deep footprints led into the mountain. Chu Feng drew his axe. From that moment onward, every mistake could kill them. Wind grew stronger. Snow filled their tracks. Du Dihai's breathing became heavy. He felt responsible for every villager who had followed him. Then Chu Feng saw paw prints beside the human trail. They belonged to a large cat. The snow leopard was nearby. Chu Feng gave the search another half hour. After that, even guilt could not justify staying. The trail reached a small ridge. Beyond it lay deeper and more dangerous territory. Du Dahai wanted to retreat. Chu Feng asked for 1 minute. He climbed a pine tree and searched the white landscape. He was looking for red. Blood against snow would be impossible to hide. He found it. Red spots led southeast and downhill. The missing men were injured. Worse, they were moving away from the village. Something had prevented them from turning back. Chu Feng remembered Wang Wei repairing his house harder than anyone. The loud man was reckless but not evil. Sun Quan was the same. Chu Feng decided on one final attempt. He and Du Dahai descended into dense pine trees. A snow leopard growled nearby. Strangely, that sound relieved Chu Feng. 1 leopard could be handled by 4 adult men. Then they found the blood trail. Over a small hill, Wang Wei and Sun Quan finally appeared. They sat back to back in the snow. Rope bound them together. Sun Quan's face and arms were cut. Wang Wei's lower body was soaked in blood. Their injuries were not claw marks. Human beings had done this. Du Dahai almost rushed forward. Chu Feng grabbed him. The snow leopard suddenly exploded from nearby bushes and fled. 3 armed men stepped from the trees. They wore military armor. Curved swords hung in their hands. Chu Feng recognized them as soldiers from Di. The supposedly cursed mountain had finally revealed its human monsters. 1 soldier chased Du Dihai. Chu Feng understood that the chief could not win a direct fight. He drew his crude bow. The first arrow struck a soldier's chest. The weapon lacked enough power to kill him instantly. Chu Feng adjusted. His old combat instincts were merging with his new body. When the soldier charged, Chu Feng stepped aside. The curved blade missed. Chu Feng's axe buried itself in the enemy. The soldier collapsed in disbelief. A skinny commoner had killed a trained warrior? Chu Feng ordered Wang Wei and Sun Quan to keep their heads down. Then he climbed a tree. The other soldiers returned after failing to catch Du Dahai. They approached their dead companion. Chu Feng drew the bow again. This time he aimed for the neck. The arrow pierced a soldier's throat. The man sat in the snow, desperately clutching the wound. Chu Feng jumped down. He freed Wang Wei and Sun Quan. Du Dahai reappeared behind the final enemy. The remaining soldier found himself surrounded. Chu Feng could not allow him to escape. A survivor could bring an entire patrol. Chu Feng gave the order to attack. The Dai soldier dropped his sword. He fell to his knees and surrendered. While Chu Feng fought on the mountain, disaster had reached Yulong village. Government officers arrived with torches. County official Liao Xiang led them. Chulong stood beside him. The official was not interested in justice. The border war desperately needed soldiers. Any villager accused of serious crimes could be forcibly conscripted. Chulong had provided the perfect excuse. More than 20 men had entered forbidden Yulong Mountain. Liu Xiang could call their actions treason. He accused them of secretly communicating with Da. Women and children begged. Taking the village's young men would leave every household to starve. Liu Xiang cared more about promotions. Chulong calmly revealed that 4 more men remained on the mountain. One of them was his own brother. The villagers cursed him. Officers began dragging men away. Then Chu Feng's voice came from the darkness. He asked who had claimed they went up the mountain to help Da. Everyone turned. Chu Feng walked into the torchlight. Du Dihai stood beside him. One injured companion had to be carried. A bound dust soldier stumbled behind them. Chu Feng held 2 severed enemy heads by their hair. He threw the heads before Liao Xiang. The official's face turned white. Chu Feng explained that the villagers had entered Yulong Mountain to hunt enemy spies. The prisoner spoke in the language of Da. The evidence could not be ignored. Chu Feng calmly admitted killing the other 2 soldiers. Liao Xiang's attitude changed immediately. Messengers rushed toward the county government. Every villager stared at Chu Feng, admiration mixed with fear. Chulong and his mother had no words. The government took the entire group to town. This time they were given food and a place to rest instead of prison cells. The next morning, Vice Magistrate Liao Xiang personally greeted Chu Feng. He handed him an official appointment. Chu Fom had become the mountain patrol guard of Yulong Mountain. The position was small. The benefits were enormous. Chu Fom could legally hunt. He was also exempt from grain taxes. Yulong Village celebrated. No one envied him. They had watched him throw enemy heads into the snow. Everyone knew the price of the title. Wang Wei and Sun Can exaggerated the mountain battle whenever they retold it. They conveniently minimized the part where they had been captured. Their dramatic stories only made Chu Fom sound more terrifying. When the villagers returned home, they gathered outside the Chu household. Chu Fom's mother suddenly smiled at him. She praised him as a worthy member of the family. She promised his full grain share. He could return whenever he wanted. Chu Fom looked at her without warmth. He asked whether the Chu household was really a place worth returning to. Then he walked away. Du Dihai handled the rest through village law. Chulong had reported his own neighbors. His betrayal almost sent Yulong Village's young men to the battlefield. The verdict was permanent exile. Chulong and his mother were expelled. If they returned within 10 miles, village law allowed severe punishment. Chu Fom felt almost nothing. They had tried to destroy him. They had endangered every person who helped him. Not killing them himself already felt merciful. He only wanted to go home. Shasha waited at the door. The moment she saw him, she ran into his arms. She repeated that he was safe while tears covered her face. Meow Meow had stayed awake too. The little girl tried not to cry because her father told her to be brave. Her swollen expression made Chu Fom laugh. That night, Shasha cooked sorghum rice mixed with pork lard cracklings and wild onions. The meal was simple. After killing soldiers and facing government officers, it smelled like heaven. Meow Meow swallowed her first bite too quickly to taste it. She immediately demanded another. Her parents laughed. Chu Fom finally understood what he wanted from this second life. He did not need glory. He needed this table. He needed Shasha smiling. He needed Meow Meow asking for another bite. Unfortunately, War did not care about peaceful wishes. Chu Fom began selling hides and meat in town. He learned that a single pig and lamb could not create lasting security. Then another problem appeared at home. The original Chu Fom's father finally emerged. The man had spent most of his life avoiding work. He had ignored the family conflict. Now that his wife and favorite son were gone, he suddenly needed Chu Fom. When Chu Fom returned, his father was dragging Meow Meow by the arm. Shasha fought desperately to hold on to her daughter. The old man screamed that Chu Fom had destroyed the family. He threatened to take Meow Meow to the river and die with her. Something inside Chu Fom snapped. His hand closed around the old man's arm. The pressure forced him to release Meow Meow. Chu Fom threw his father to the ground. The old man immediately began crying and rolling in the dirt. Chu Fom recognized emotional blackmail. He placed the axe near his father's neck. The entire village froze. Du Dihai warned that killing a father meant execution. Chu Fom looked at Shasha and Meow Meow. He asked what would happen when the old man attacked them again. Du Dihai had no answer. The axe rose. For the first time, Chu Fom's father realized his obedient son was truly gone. He scrambled backward. Shasha stepped between them. Her eyes held Chu Fom's. She quietly asked him to stop. Chu Fom lowered the weapon. Villagers rushed forward and separated everyone. The father's real purpose soon became obvious. Without his wife, no one cooked or washed for him. He wanted Chu Fom to care for him. The suicide threat had been a performance. He finally begged for grain. Chu Fom stepped forward again. Sun Quan suddenly appeared. He reminded Chu Fom that a son could not strike his father. Then Sun Quan punched the old man himself. Wang Wei tripped him when he tried to escape. The two young men warned him never to touch Shasha or Meow Meow again. The frightened father fled. Chu Fom returned to his wife and daughter. They held him tightly. In his first life, Chu Fom had been an orphan. He had never known how frightening it felt to have people he could lose. Now that fear followed every dangerous decision. Yet it also gave him a reason to keep climbing Yulong Mountain. A safe future required more money, and the mountain remained the only place where Chu Fom's old-world knowledge gave him an advantage. Du Dihai eventually showed Chu Fom an old sheepskin map passed down through Yulong Village. The village's ancestors had once been soldiers guarding the mountain against spies from Da. That explained the hidden weapons in almost every household. It also explained why the villagers possessed a map no ordinary official seemed to know about. Chu Fom studied the fated paths carefully. A river and several streams crossed the mountain. His mind immediately turned toward food. Moving water could hold crayfish. Mud along the banks might hide oil toads. In town, wealthy families paid excellent prices for both. Chu Fom recruited Wang Wei, Sun Can, and Du Chong for a small expedition. They agreed to follow every order in exchange for shares of the profit. The four men entered Yulong Mountain with the old map. They approached the dense forest where Chu Fom had rescued Wang Wei and Sun Can from dust soldiers. The younger men joked that the mountain no longer seemed frightening. Ducheng mentioned a bear. Wang Wei laughed that bears should be hibernating. Chu Feng immediately stopped. Wang Wei was correct. Bears should have been sleeping. So why did fresh, enormous paw prints cross the snow before them? Sun Quan placed his foot inside one print. The mark swallowed his entire shoe. Chu Feng checked the map. The bear had moved north. He changed their route west. Nobody argued. They safely reached a fast-moving stream that had not completely frozen. Oil toads slept beneath small mounds of earth. Crayfish hid beneath stones near the water. For hours the four searched. Their baskets slowly filled. Each man collected roughly a dozen toads and more than 20 crayfish. Chu Feng ordered them home before darkness. They avoided the forest interior. Excitement made everyone careless. Even Chu Feng relaxed. Then he looked forward. A massive brown bear stood 30 meters away. The animal was enormous. It stared directly at them. Chu Feng ordered everyone to remain calm. Running would trigger a chase. The bear moved. Panic destroyed discipline. The men fled. The bear followed. Wang Wei stumbled. Chu Feng and Sun Quan grabbed him. The situation was collapsing when another predator appeared. The snow leopard attacked the bear. Chu Feng could not understand. A leopard had almost no chance against such an animal. Then he realized it was not hunting them. The leopard had deliberately chosen the bear. Chu Feng recognized an opportunity. He ordered everyone to run. They escaped until darkness swallowed the mountain. The map and Chu Feng's sense of direction guided them home. At the foot of Yulong Mountain, the four men began laughing. It was the laughter of people who had almost died. Wang Wei surrendered his entire share of the catch to Chu Feng. Sun Quan and Ducheng did the same. None of them wanted another deep mountain hunt. Even Chu Feng remained disturbed. The snow leopard's behavior made no sense. Before dawn, he prepared to carry the toads and crayfish to town. Then something beside his fence moved. Chu Feng reached for his axe. The snow leopard lay in the snow. Its belly and back were torn open from the battle with the bear. Frozen blood covered its white fur. The animal had apparently waited there through the night. When it saw Chu Feng, it slowly stood. Something small hung from its mouth. The injured leopard approached closer than ever before. Chu Feng's skin crawled. He prepared to strike. The leopard stopped. It lowered its head. A tiny creature fell into the snow. A newborn cub cried like a kitten. The mother leopard looked at Chu Feng one final time. Then she disappeared into the falling snow. Chu Feng finally understood. The bear had probably killed the leopard's other cubs. Her suicidal attack had been revenge. That revenge accidentally saved Chu Feng and his companions. Now the injured mother could no longer raise her last cub. She had brought it to the human who once left meat near his house. The irony was painful. That meat had originally been bait in a trap meant to capture her. Shasha carried the cub inside. They had no milk. She mashed rice into warm water and fed the tiny animal rice soup. Meow Meow quickly named the cub Hua Hua. Chu Feng rushed to town and sold his catch. The oil toads and crayfish earned good money. He divided the profits as promised. When he returned home, the mother snow leopard appeared once more. This time she dragged a small roe deer. She released the carcass beside Chu Feng's home. Then she vanished again. Chu Feng could only stare. Shasha remembered old stories about intelligent spirit animals living on Yulong Mountain. Chu Feng did not know whether the legends were true. He knew the leopard had brought his family food. Because he was now the official mountain patrol guard, he butchered the deer openly. Villagers began buying affordable meat from him. Some paid with copper, others traded grain. Chu Feng intentionally sold below town prices. Villagers could carry extra meat to town and resell it. Their profit bought grain for the next tax collection. Chu Feng saved time. The village earned money. His family gained allies. Not one person in Yulong village starved to death after Chu Feng began hunting. His name spread to neighboring settlements. News eventually reached Shasha's original family. Her grandmother had sold her into marriage for 2 bags of rough rice 6 years earlier. Her father had never visited. Shasha's mother had died giving birth. The family called Shasha cursed. Now they heard her husband had meat and money. Suddenly they remembered their granddaughter. Shasha's grandmother and father arrived at Yulong village. They tried dragging Shasha away. Her father demanded 100 pounds of grain. Villagers hesitated because this appeared to be private family business. Shasha cried beneath their accusations. Then Chu Feng arrived carrying his axe. He calmly explained that other villagers might be outsiders. He was Shasha's husband. He was not an outsider. Chu Feng kicked his father-in-law in the face. Blood burst from the man's nose. 2 teeth flew. Shasha's grandmother screamed about shame. Chu Feng asked where their shame had been for 6 years. They sold a 16-year-old girl for grain. They never checked whether she lived. Now they smelled success and came demanding payment. Chu Fom refused. Sha Sha's relatives were driven from Yulong village. Later, another uncle returned with a softer strategy. He knelt and begged for grain. This time, Chu Fom left the decision to Sha Sha. Sha Sha looked at the family that had abandoned her. Then she firmly refused. The grain belonged to her husband and daughter. Her family could work if they wanted food. Chu Fom watched quietly. The frightened girl he had first met was changing too. She had a warm home now. She had neighbors who respected her. Most importantly, she finally knew someone would stand beside her. Then Widow Li burst into Chu Fom's breakfast gathering with tears streaming down her face. Her 14-year-old son Huzi had suddenly collapsed after the violent clash with Tawan village. The boy was unconscious, pale, and shaking after fighting with men who carried filthy, rusted farm tools. Chu Fom ran to the house as one terrifying possibility entered his mind. In his old world, proper medicine could fight infection, but in the Great Qin dynasty, something like tetanus could simply mean death. The village doctor ordered more blankets and a stronger fire, but Chu Fom immediately warned that blindly adding heat would not solve the boy's condition. Dr. Zhang Xian challenged the hunter at first, then unexpectedly swallowed his pride and told Chu Fom to explain his judgment while the doctor assisted. For Chu Fom's survival was no longer only about feeding his own family, because the knowledge of his first life had now become Huzi's best chance to live.